Hi, everyone. Hi, Harold. Um, Hi, Elizabeth. A few names I recognize and some who were with us last week. So thanks for coming. Today's session is on researching current issues and events, kind of both. So I've sort of waffled between the two titles. So one thing that I want to start out with, which is something that I always start with, is just finding a good topic to do research. So one of the reasons you might want to pay attention to current events that are going on in the news is just to find a good topic for your research papers or your research projects if you're in graduate school. Um, and one way to think about it is every time a big event happens and people are talking about it in the news, try to think of what sort of philosophical questions or ethical questions are raised by that event, or maybe historical questions. What are things that you wonder about? What are things that other people might wonder about connected to that event? And so first, I'm just going to start talking about that. So I was thinking about in the past year, what are some current events that have happened and how could they inspire some good research topics? One event that people have talked about a lot was Elon Musk buying Twitter and then revealing all the inner workings of the social media sort of censorship that was going on. Another is the war in Ukraine. Another is the overturning of Roe versus Wade by the Supreme Court. And then another was in England, some whistleblowers challenging the current wisdom on transgender surgeries. So these are some events that have happened in the past year. And just me throwing out 4 events in your mind, I'm sure you're thinking of all kinds of issues that attach to these 4 events. So, for example, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, it kind of raises questions about free speech and do free speech rules apply only to the government or also to companies like Twitter? Do we want our FBI sort of censoring things that happen on the internet? It brings up legal questions, government questions. You could look into the history of the concept of free speech, the philosophy of why that's important. So as we think about current events, we want to kind of be up on them and find what people are saying about them, find what thoughtful writers are discussing and different sides of that issue. So one focus I'm going to have today is on needing to understand all sides of an issue to fully understand it. And we hear a lot of talk about fake news or misinformation. And, it's kind of scary to think that our government or any kind of company on the internet is going to decide for us what is fake news or what is misinformation, because we sort of have to be able to find it for ourselves, right? We have to be able to evaluate and assess the information that we see, especially if we're like out on a social media site and we see someone, using a meme or making an argument. We have to be able to evaluate that and find current credible information. So, we don't necessarily need a company or the government to decide what is fake news or what's misinformation if we can, kind of be informed ourselves. So how do we do that? So today we're going to talk about, looking on the internet, but also looking in the library resources for good information on current issues. So I've got a little PowerPoint here that I'm going to start with. If you've ever had me for one of these or a class before, you know that I'm big on finding really good issues to research. So we don't want to research things that are already settled in people's minds, like whether child abuse is wrong. Most people already have the right idea about that, and that's pretty well settled. We want to find something unsettled, like is all spanking a good form of abuse or a form of punishment? Sorry, I misstated that, but is it abuse or punishment? So that's still an open, unsettled issue in some people's minds where people argue about it, have different views. So you want to take whatever topic you're interested in and try to find what's unsettled about it. So I have here, what is a current issue? That means something that's still, people have different views on it, or they don't even know about it yet. They don't know the answer, or they don't even know this issue exists yet. So that's current. That makes it still interesting to people and still worth discussing. The next bullet point here has to be debatable or mysterious. So something that people wonder about. And then the next one, it should be important. It should connect to our values and our goals, and that most humans share these kind of values or goals, or at least some people do. It should be enduring, meaning the issue is current, but it also connects to age-old questions that people have had about what it means to be human or how to live a good life. throughout history. Is it researchable, meaning can you find information on it, or is it one of these things that's so new that there's not a lot to be found on it? And if that's the case, you can maybe create some of your own original research. But it's important that you find an issue where you actually can get some information on it, or else it might not be the best thing to research. And sometimes that just means using different terms to do your research, or finding a different way to look at your topic and a different way to search for information on it, like using a synonym or a different way of stating it. And so I always recommend, when you're trying to find issues and understand them, first look at background information on the issues and try to find a specific narrow angle on your issue, so it's not too broad, and also something that raises a question, like I said, and then find the terminology that's often used to research this issue, and that will help you do more effective searches. So how do we do that? Especially because a lot of what we see out there is biased or has a political agenda, or we might not agree with it. How do we kind of find the truth in situations? So I'm kind of referring to issues that are difficult for people, where it's hard to, just know. It's not like saying the sky is blue, where it's just obvious to everyone and it's a factual question, yes or no. I'm talking about issues that are subtle and that are difficult to discuss. So how do we find what's true about them? So a few things that I want to talk about with that are first, using the internet, and sort of pros and cons of using the internet to find issues and to find information on them. So a pro of using the internet is it's great to find current opinions, debates, and views. And sometimes in academia, in academic sources, we don't always present different perspectives on issues in terms of from different value systems or different political points of view. So the internet is a great place to look at things from different angles, maybe find op-eds, which are opinion editorial articles in newspapers or magazines. And so if you look in Google or another search engine, it will bring up a lot of those popular magazines and newspapers where there's a lot of influential articles being written that lots of people are reading. Maybe politicians are reading them, scientists are reading them, academics are reading them. So we want to look in the public square to find out what's being discussed and what are people saying, what are the different views. So pick a topic that you're not scared of learning about, and that you don't get offended or sensitive when you read other points of view on it, because you do want to understand the different views. And so the internet has short, easily digestible articles. It has also, if you go down to this bullet point right here, about the fourth one down, here, I'll try to point at it. Think tanks, which are political organizations that do research, nonprofits, government websites, churches, religious groups, universities, free archives. All of these things can be found on the internet for free, especially things like religious organizations. They want to put their information out there for free. And you can find really good starting points and good issues in those websites. And Google is just a powerful search engine, so it is a good place to start because it's going to bring up a ton of it. It kind of knows what you want, knows what you're thinking. Sometimes it's going to bring up a lot of good stuff. But the cons of using the internet to find information on current issues are the results will be somewhat biased, because Google and other internet companies, they have certain political causes that they're promoting at times, and that's a fact that they are doing that. So you're not going to see all the different views if you just do a simple Google search for your topic. Although I do recommend starting with that. But then another problem is a lot of articles you see are behind a paywall or a subscription on the internet, and you don't necessarily want to buy subscriptions to all the newspapers out there. Another issue is you can't trust everything you read on the internet, because anyone can write on the internet, like on social media or on Wikipedia. And then also on the internet, people are trying to make money off of what they write. It's commercial. They're trying to get your attention, get you to click on their website. They're trying to sell something with the ads on their website. Newspapers are trying to sell their newspaper with having headlines that are attention getting. So that's all going to sort of skew the information. And also they're catering towards their audience if their audience has a certain worldview. And that's going to automatically build in some bias to some of those articles. So those are some problems with using the open internet, but I still do think it's a good place to start. So what are the solutions to these problems of bias and other issues? One solution is just you being an intelligent and critical thinker as you're reading. So be skeptical and vet sources that you read for credibility. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. Another solution is doing a targeted search for a certain publication, especially one that won't be emphasized by Google. So like say you're looking for a Christian point of view or a conservative point of view or a libertarian point of view, and some of these might not come at the top of the search. So you might have to look in a certain publication that you know has that point of view to find different sides of the issue. And then if you find articles behind paywalls, bring them over to the library and see if we have them so you don't have to pay for subscriptions. And then the last thing is perseverance, just having the patience to keep going and looking for, making sure you have the thorough coverage of the issue that you're looking at. A lot of that is perseverance, not just believing what you read the first time you read someone's Facebook post, not settling your ideas before you have all the information on something, but persevering and really seeing what you can find on that issue. So I'm going to talk about how to do some of these solutions. All right, so the next slide here is how do you know if a source is credible? If you're looking at it on the internet, for example, you want to look at the author's credentials. So has this person earned a degree in this field? Has this person worked in this field? Does this person have relevant personal experience that makes him or her a credible person to speak on this issue? The next thing is there a publisher or an editor looking over the information before it's published? So one problem with blogs and other things on the internet is no editor or publisher is really checking the information. So, but if you read a newspaper or a magazine, presumably some editor and publisher looked at the information before it was published, so that can help it be more credible. But you want to look at the reputation of that publication or editor. Maybe they have a reputation for being politically skewed, and that's okay, just as long as you're aware of it, you can still read it. But just kind of knowing what that reputation is. If you find academic articles, there's a lot of oversight because they go through a peer review process where other experts are checking them to make sure they're credible. So that is why academic articles are considered like more credible than popular or commercial articles. But you can still find good sort of short popular articles that have editors checking through the information, because the newspapers don't want to get sued or have to correct themselves later, so they have some motivation to try to tell the truth. The third bullet point down is the date. If you're researching a current event or issue, make sure the information you're looking at is up to date if something has changed since it was written. And then the next thing is documentation. Have they cited their sources or linked to their sources for facts and evidence? Are they using statistics responsibly, or are they kind of distorting statistics? It's possible to abuse statistics, and just throw out a number just to impress people and say 90% of people said this. But then when you click on it, you find that only 10 people were surveyed or something. So it's not really a good statistic. So you want to make sure they're not exaggerating or misusing the statistics in the way they frame them. And then the next thing is objectivity. Is the source, the writer, trying to be objective, fair, and factual, or does he or she have an agenda or a political view that he or she is trying to promote? It's okay if the author does, you just have to be aware of it, so then you can find the other view and sort of contrast them. Another thing you're looking for to see if a source is credible is just, is it logical? Do you detect logical problems with the argument? Is it in depth, and is it complex, or is it overly simplistic? And the last thing is it original? Does this source have some good ideas that are somewhat original and useful and groundbreaking, or is just kind of rehashing something that's a cliche or that's been said over and over? So if you can look for all of these criteria or qualities when you're reading a source on the internet, it can help you. Now, sometimes if you're looking at a website, you don't know who the publisher or the editor is, or if there is one. So you might have to click on about or look down at the bottom at the copyright information and find what organization is putting this out. And maybe it's like a political think tank and you just want to find out what causes they usually support. So you just have to maybe look into that a little bit to see if there is a certain bias to the information, or could be. And so these are all good things to be aware of, so we don't just kind of believe everything that we read. All right, next thing is I put up some examples of current issues, and some are more general and vague, and some are more specific. So I made a list here of issues that I find students have been interested in, and then over here some religious and ethical topics, which I think we don't want to overlook, because especially as Christians, these are things that are really important to us. So like over here, if you notice under current topics, I have mental health. That is way too broad of an issue. It has to be narrowed down and found a more specific angle and a more current kind of question about it. So that would be one where you might, for example, want to be up to date on the current books that have been written. Like recently there was a book written called Lost Connections, where the author was arguing that a lot of mental health problems come from a loss of community and social connections and other sort of problems with our culture. And so you'd want to be like paying attention to those latest books and also reviews of those books, because when people write book reviews, they're sort of having a debate with the author of the original book. And so that we have that book in our library, Lost Connections, and then we also have reviews of the book that are, some of them are praising it and saying why it's really useful, some are saying it's not. And so that's a way to narrow that down. And then social media is another one that has to be narrowed down. But like I was saying, Twitter brings up a lot of issues. Like, why is Twitter taken off and become more popular than like other social media sites that have failed? Or what does Twitter have to do with free speech? Or how is Twitter used as like a public marketplace of ideas? You could also look at negative things about social media. There's a lot of open questions about why we've had so many mass shootings. So there are, ways online to find databases of statistics where they've compiled statistics about all the shooters, and you could look at that to try to find out, what do they all have in common with each other, or what might be causing this. And so notice here, there's a lot of really broad topics that have to be specified, narrowed down, and then find a current question about it. So with World War II as a historical topic, you wouldn't want to write about just something like what happened during World War II, because everyone sort of knows that, or was Hitler a bad guy? Everyone knows the answer to that, right? But you might want to ask, how did Hitler brainwash the people of his country? How did he use propaganda? And you could study the way he used the media. And that could be an interesting question that not everyone knows about yet, and could still bear more research. Or you could ask, about anti-Semitism. Why did that take root? And how do we see it nowadays, and make it more current? But just, you can write about historical topics, but still find something unsettled about them, or something still mysterious about them to write about. The foreign wars of intervention, people are still wondering, like with Vietnam and Afghanistan, and now the question of getting involved in Ukraine, what is the right policy to have on those things? So you can look at history, but also connect it to the current issues as well. And then over here, I've got some religious topics, church unity and denominations. The term for that is ecumenism, which is like, can churches all unite? Spiritual abuse and corrupt leadership, also sexual abuse. Those are big issues that have come up recently in the church. The debate between contemporary worship versus traditional worship or liturgy. Youth groups and how they can be effective, spiritual gifts and whether they're still active, the role of women and men in marriage or in the church, how we can create quality Christian art or music or film or literature, and biblical leadership roles. What's the best way to structure a church leadership? Why is revival happening in the developing world? And antinatalism, which is a current idea people have where they're against having children, and what would be like a Christian response to that. So these are all just to get your mind going about some current issues and things that you could research online. So moving on to the next slide here, I mentioned that one solution to bias on the internet is that you can do a targeted search for certain publications that will give you points of view that are not normally seen. So, that Google is not going to promote. So, for example, National Review is a really good magazine that takes a conservative point of view, but it's not maybe going to come up in the top of your Google search. So you might want to search just within that magazine because they always have really thoughtful articles and might give you a different point of view on some of the issues of the day. The Atlantic is a good one that's more from a liberal point of view, and that has really thoughtful articles as well. Reason magazine has a libertarian, so a whole different political point of view. That's very much like based on the Constitution and the idea of like freedom in all things. And then there's some religious magazines that are really good. First Things is a very thoughtful Christian and religious magazine. Christianity Today. Relevant is a Christian magazine that's more sort of cutting edge. Of course, newspapers like New York Times and Wall Street Journal have opinion pieces that are very thoughtful. City Journal is a more conservative one. Psychology Today will bring up psychology topics. But remember to read all of these with a skeptical eye because you want to be open to finding the different sides of the issue and understanding them. And then there's some free websites I also recommend if you're looking for topics or looking for a religious point of view on a topic that you are researching. There's a great page called the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops topics page where they have a list of current issues, and the Catholic Bishops of America have written sort of a Christian and ethical perspective on different topics. And of course, some Christians don't agree on, all these topics, but it's a good starting point to look at and find a, sort of reasonable, well-educated viewpoint on certain issues. So that's a good website that's free. There's a couple other Christian ones that are kind of current, Christ and Pop Culture and the Gospel Coalition. ProCon.org is a wonderful website where they collect newspaper articles for you on both sides of an issue, pro and con. Wikipedia often gets into the current issues because it's being constantly updated. But of course, you have to verify everything on Wikipedia, and you shouldn't cite it as a source because we don't know who the author is or what the author's credentials are. And then Twitter and social media, like I was saying, they're good public square places to find ideas. Just on Twitter, we have all kinds of professional communities debating things and discussing current topics. For example, lately on Twitter, a lot of teachers and education researchers have been debating the best way to teach kids to read. It's called the Science of Reading debate. And what is the scientifically proven method to teach kids to read? And so that's very controversial, very current right now. It's been controversial for about the last 50 years, but it's kind of reaching ahead right now. So Science of Reading would be a great thing to read up on, but also to just look at on the internet or social media, what are people saying at this moment and who is writing? Because a lot of them are people with credentials and expertise that are writing on there or linking to other articles. And so it's a good place to find good articles linked as well. And then also, like I said before, nonprofits and political think tanks and advocacy groups like that have a certain cause they're fighting for, they're all on the internet, and they can be good places to find a certain issue or point of view. All right, and then, but why also come to the library? So this is, once you've done searching on the internet or you've done some searching on the internet, I want to make the argument for coming to the library as well. And if you've had me before, you've probably heard this argument before, but the library provides you a ton of resources. So the first reason is the amount of resources that are paid for by your tuition. A lot of the resources in the library are not available on the internet, and we've bought them and spent a lot of resources on them. The quality of resources, you don't have to do as much vetting in the library because a lot of it is vetted already, and it's academic at times. The organization of resources makes them easy to find, and you have librarians like me to help you. The findability of resources and the ease of citing them. So the library system will give you citations for your sources. At the library, these are some great tools that I want to show you for current research. We have Primo, which is the second one here. That's our main search system to start with. It's a new system. It's really exciting, and there's a lot of good tools in it. But we also have some tabs at the top of Primo, the newspaper and magazine finder. Sometimes in Primo, newspaper and magazine articles, especially really current ones, aren't going to come up right away. So I recommend trying these tools. And then I'm going to show you my research guide that I made on this issue, and it's going to have links to all of these tools so that you can use them. Factiva is a really good one. It's given some people some technical issues, but it has the front page articles from all the major newspapers, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times. So it's a good one to browse for articles and get really current articles, just like you subscribe to the newspaper, but you don't have to. And so these are things we have through the library. There's Nexus Uni, which is a database we have that has good full coverage of recent magazines. CQ Researcher is a great database that gives you pros and cons on different issues. And if you're struggling to find a topic, I recommend going to CQ Researcher to start and just looking through their list of topics, kind of like that Catholic bishops page where they just list topics for you to browse. That's a great place to do that. And then they'll give you different articles and with different views. Although they don't always cover all points of view on it. And I think CQ Researcher itself has some political bias, but that's okay because you can just be a skeptical reader and then you can go on the internet and find other things to balance it out and make sure you're covering all sides. And then Academic Search Complete and ProQuest Central are databases we have that search everything. They search newspapers, magazines, academic journals. So those are really huge search databases to look in. Google Scholar is an amazing search tool that you can link to our library collection to search what we have at the library. And also will take you to some free resources online too. So to do that in Google Scholar, you go to their drop-down menu and just go to settings and then library links, and then you can link it over to your library account really easily. And then interlibrary loan, if there's ever an article or a current book that you see on the internet, but we don't have it in our collection, just go to our interlibrary loan page and request it. And our wonderful interlibrary loan staff will almost always be able to get that for you, and often pretty quickly too. So these are all the tools that you have, so you don't have to, always be searching on the internet or paying for subscriptions to things. So I'm going to show you a couple of those, and I'm going to show you starting with my research guide that I made. And one more word before I leave my PowerPoint is don't forget to bring in age-old wisdom to your research on current issues. So we want to look at what people in the past said about age-old questions as well. So we want to look at scripture. We want to look at religious and ethical perspectives, great books, which are famous like classics in different fields, classic literature like fiction and poetry and drama, classic philosophy like Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, what was said on this issue throughout history. And then just to quote C.S. Lewis, old books can show us our era's blind spots. So sometimes in the modern era, we think we kind of know everything, but we don't. And we can learn from the past sometimes that they had some more wisdom on some of the ethical questions and the religious questions. So this is the link to the research guide. I also put it in the chat if you want to follow along. So the research guide is just I'm going to switch over to that. It's just a list of all these databases that I've been mentioning, so you can find them later. So it looks like this, and my picture and my contact info is at the bottom if you need to ask me anything, or if you want to set up an appointment with me to work on research. It has a bar here to search our Primo Search. It has a chat button if you want to chat instantly. I've also linked some magazines and newspapers front pages online here. And then some of these databases I mentioned, like the ProCon Articles, the CQ Researcher, and the Council of Catholic Bishops. These are really good places to find basic opinions and points of view on your issues, and make sure you're looking at different sides. And then some of the databases I recommended here. But I wanted to focus on finding newspaper and magazine articles because that's a thing that people have trouble with in our library system sometimes. So if you notice here, I've got a few key things in the right column here linked of how to find newspapers and magazines. And so I'm going to take you over first to the magazine and journal finder. and that's in Primo. So if I'm in Primo, which this is our main search page and what it looks like, if you look at the top, you'll see there's a few tabs at the top, and you can go to the journals and magazines, and then you can look up like the Atlantic magazine, and it used to be called the Atlantic Monthly. So you look it up, and then it will tell you where it's located in our online system. So also if we have it in the library in physical form too. So it will show you the databases to go to. So here where it says EBSCO, I can click on those databases and find articles from the Atlantic. So that's the magazine and journal finder. But I also want to show you the newspaper finder, which is a new tool we have. You can click on any of these newspaper titles and then look up an article title or just a keyword topic. If you're not sure what the article title is, you can just look up any topic. So for example, if I look up Elon Musk, I just selected New York Times, so we'll see what's being mentioned in the New York Times about that. And then you can also sort over here by date, so you can get the most current information. See where it says sort by, well, it only has relevance, and you can also limit to online access if you want to read the articles online, which most of these are online anyway. So this is the magazine and newspaper finder. If you find something over on Google, like, because Google is a great place to search for current article titles, but maybe you can't get into that newspaper. I'm guessing the New York Times is going to be very critical of Elon Musk lately. So that would be one perspective to look at. So look at this one, Elon Musk's appetite for destruction. And so obviously that's probably a negative take. And then, but over the New York Post, it says, it's more taking his side. So here you can see different views, but with some of these articles, I'm not going to be able to get into them here. So like, I'm going to click on this. It's not going to let me into it, see, because of the subscription. But if I look at this title, I can take it over here and see if we have it in our newspaper finder. Okay, so those are a few good resources. Now back to my research guide. So this is the research guide called Current Issues and Best Bets for Starting Research. So you can always Google this or link this, bookmark it to your page if you want to save all these links. It's also found in our database list under where it says Current Issues. But I'm going to take you over to Factiva. So now notice here, this is like the newsstand. I can look at the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post front page for today. So if you're just looking for sources and looking for issues to write about, this is a good place to start. And so say I want to see more from the Wall Street Journal. So I click on view all. And so it's like having a subscription. And then you can also search up here for that. And then Nexus Uni, as I was mentioning before, has a lot of up-to-date coverage of magazines. And this is what that looks like. So you can look up a publication, like if you want a certain magazine, you can click on news if you just want current news articles. If you're doing legal research, you can click on cases or law reviews, or business research, you can click on company info or country info. So some of these databases, they are covering business, law, and government, which are basically like current issues related to those big topics. And same with Factiva, it's business oriented, but obviously has articles on everything. And then I wanted to show you also the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops. So this is a free website. It's not through the library, but if you notice, there's all these different topics. So sometimes it's hard to find a Christian or religious point of view that's more academically oriented. So these are pretty good. They're short, but they kind of present a alternative point of view to what you might read in the secular press or secular academic articles. So for example, like the Catholics are big on bioethics, and questions of abortion, euthanasia, suicide, and so I'll just click on that and show you. They have all these documents here related to stem cell research. Starts with the dignity of a person, and that's why they object to a lot of procedures nowadays. And it has all those documents you can open. They also have the issues of contraception, which are some interesting points of view on that. Let's see. The sexuality, and so you can just look through this. And let's see, going over back to the current issues page, I wanted to show you the CQ Researcher database, which is one we have through the library. And so this is, notice you can browse topics here in all of these big, broad areas. So like say you're interested in employment and labor issues, like unions, and how employees are treated, and or education. I want to try, let's see, defense and national security. So notice when I click on defense and national security, it has all these issues within it. So I could click on this and find what is written on the war in Afghanistan, for example. And then I'm going to find more reports, which are background information that summarizes the issues. So you can find the good topics to write about, and also different views. So say I click on, and terrorism is always an ongoing question, how to prevent terrorism, and how far to sort of infringe on people's rights of privacy in order to prevent terrorism. And rebuilding Afghanistan, that's been very controversial, like the best way to end a war and withdraw from it. And so this is, it also shows you when these were written, so how current they are. So after Afghanistan is very current, it was just put together. So can the US restore its global credibility? And so this is talking about how the end of the war was sort of a flop for the United States. There were a lot of problems with it. So some background on that. And that brings up issues of like, how long do you stay in a country like that? Is it important to stay there for stability and to prevent the Taliban from taking over and causing more suffering? So if you click on ProCon here, and then there's all these other things you can look at, like maps and graphs, background. But look at this, it gives you a pro and con article on after Afghanistan. So it's going to be one that's probably more agreeing with how our government did it, and one that's critiquing the government. And thank God for freedom of speech, right? So we can read different points of view. So this is CQ Researcher, great place to look for pro-con articles and issues. Notice here there's other issues on the side. It's not going to give you the whole picture of everything, but it's a good place to start. And then the ProCon Articles website. So this is a free website online, and it also lists topics here. So prescription drug costs, that's interesting. Prisons, student loan debt. Is the internet making us stupid? There's a great question. So prescription drug, that makes me think of also the vaccines and the employer vaccine mandates, and whether the big pharmaceutical companies are profiting from those. So they're covering some of those questions here. And you want to pick something that has an ethical dimension or a philosophical dimension. It's not as good usually to pick something that's a purely scientific question like climate change, but to pick something that has more interesting issues to discuss. Although with climate change, you could make an argument about government intervention and whether that's a good idea and things like that. But pick something where you can think of some of your own ideas about it too. And you don't have to be necessarily a scientific expert about it. All right, so these are some of what I think are great websites and databases to start with if you're doing, and then over here some popular magazines and newspapers to look at their front page. So like I'll just click on First Things real quick. It's a Christian magazine. And so you can look through their headlines, and has very up-to-date stuff about the church, and like the Methodist Church, the Church of England. And it's a great place to see, and that's not going to maybe come up in a Google search, but it's good to look at. All right, so those are some of my favorite places to look. Can I take some questions? Does anyone have questions, or I can help you look for something on your topic? Sorry, stop sharing. Oh, a lot of questions. All right, Havila Wingfield.
Hi, yes. Can you email us the link to your research guide?
Sure.
Thanks.
It's also, yeah, is this one linking right here in the chat guide? I can also email it to you. Just you personally or to everyone?
To everyone, yeah. I don't, for some reason, I can't see the chat guide.
All right, so let's see. I'm going to put this here again. Maybe this will help. It's also, let's see.
Okay, that worked.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. And then does someone else have a hand up here? Yeah, so Madi asks about business, definitely. And we also have Harold Henkel, the business librarian he's in the course right now too, so he can comment on this as well. But yeah, let me turn back on the sharing thing here. Let's see, how do I do this? Share screen, there's Harold. Wow. So I'm gonna show you, this is my research guide, but if you go to our full list of databases, which looks like this, is called the A to Z or full database list. It has all of our research databases that we subscribe to with your tuition dollars. So it's about 400 databases. It's a lot to look through, but over here, we've made these guides called suggested databases by subject. So my guide is the current issues and best places to start one that I was just showing you. And then Harold has made the business and the leadership guide here. So I'll just click on that. And Harold, do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, you have to just put like our guides. We try to put really the core database, the most useful useful databases we recommend for all the different programs at Regent. And so there's a good way. Lots of our students are in dual programs, and help any students who are are taking classes outside their concentration. And so this particularly useful, like if you're if you're a student, if you're majoring in ministry and have a business class to take, just head over to my business guide or contact me directly. We can help get some good recommendations for your business research.
Yeah, and Harold can meet with you, and I can meet with you. So also, some of the ones I just showed you are good for business, like Nexus Uni. But if you click on some of these and open up, this is Business Source Complete. So notice you can also search other databases that are owned by the same company here. You can look up company information. You can look for a certain publication to see if they have a certain journal that you're looking for, or research a certain company. So that's the Business Source Complete database. There's also ABI, which is a big, huge database too. But these are all good ones to try. Is there another question? I think I saw. Okay, so healthcare policy. So if you go over here to where it says, I think it's under science. Oh. So if you look here where it says psychology and counseling, we probably should have a different one for healthcare too, but some of these are good. And then I think where it says science, some of these would be good for healthcare. But I think we do have one. If you
yeah, we do have one. Just need to get it over on that page somehow.
Which one, Harold?
We do have guides for health science. We just need to get the link over to that page.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So if you click on more subjects, it's going to show you all of our research guides in different subjects. And let's see, so would that be under health law? I don't know, I might have to get back to it. And here's healthcare management. So if you look here, this is the best databases for that. Is this what you're looking for?
No, I mean, so like healthcare policy kind of from the government side, but that would also include what think tanks are saying about it, what advocacy groups are saying about it, what lobbyists are writing, like not how to run, not healthcare policy in the sense of like, how do I run my hospital, but more about its intersection with law, like insurance laws, all the stuff. There's so much Congress has been doing for the past few years and much more that think tanks and advocacy groups are trying to get them to do. But is there any sort of database that could kind of look into both of those or all those things?
Well, this, like I'm showing you right here with CQ Researcher, these are all subtopics that they cover under health. So
Okay.
you're talking about like the Affordable Care Act, maybe?
Yep, that, I mean, there's been tons of legislation and it just be helpful. Yeah, I just wondered if there was a database because there's so much information on this and like trying to find it all yourself through all the newspapers, all the think tanks, all the lobbying groups, all the
Well, yeah, that's a great question. In my experience, it's hard to find any source that's going to really cover everything, but CQ Researcher is a good start, and the ProCon org, like to get a handle on just basic views of these things, or because they're going to both collect pros and cons. So if you can find the focus that you're looking at, but I would also say, like I was saying, search in particular publications, because like I was saying before, like libertarians, which like Reason Magazine is a good representative. I often search just in Google Reason Magazine and then my topic like health insurance or Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, or put in different terms, maybe, because they are always going to take the point of view that the government should just stay out of all of this, right? And that it would be cheaper and better healthcare if the government would stay out of it. Whereas some people are more like socialist or progressive, they think the government can improve it. So I would think, like, I try to do those searches to make sure I'm covering all those points of view, for like a publication that will take that point of view. I think, that's the best thing I can think of, just to make sure. But and then to find the think tanks that are commenting on it, and like, there probably are think tanks that just focus on healthcare policy. So here's a list from another university, health policy think tanks.
Okay.
So I can just link you to this Google search I did. And then Yana asks, what databases would you recommend for historical events? Well, like I said before, if you're doing historical events, what's important is to find a way to narrow it down and also find a debatable or a mysterious topic. So like, for example, you could look at, was this thing in history good or bad for society? Or how did this strange thing happen? Like I was saying before, how did Hitler brainwash Germany? How did he use the media and propaganda? And how did he plan that out? Because he planned it for years, very strategically. And, so find a question that's kind of interesting or might have different points of view. Like, should we have dropped bombs in Japan? Should we have, was some of our practices in World War II unethical? I've seen students write about that, like dropping bombs on German cities too. So, that finding a question, and then you could look in CQ Researcher, like I was showing, that would probably have some historical topics right here. But I would start with our history databases, which you see here are linked in a guide, in our database list. So you can see primary sources, which are like actual historical documents you can read. And then you can see article databases, which are like articles about history. So that might be a good place to start. If you're doing American history, you could do these first few that are focused on America. And then some of the others are just more generally focused on all kinds of history. So that's what I would start with. Trying to think of, and I linked a database down here, Documenting the American South. It's a free online database from North Carolina, University of North Carolina, that has stuff about Southern history. It has primary sources. So that is, you can find some good things like that on online as well. But yeah, this is the history guide, so I'll send you that. And then in terms of finding topics, you could look at maybe a history magazine, or like I just like to browse through the article titles. Okay, so someone else, Yana asked, would the 1906 San Francisco earthquake be a good topic? Maybe. I mean, it would just depend on how you focus the issue, like maybe on preparation. I don't know, like were they prepared for it, or how did it impact San Francisco in the years after? So you have to kind of think of a question that would be interesting about it, that people might still be curious about, because it's kind of interesting to see how natural disasters impact a society or a civilization, like Pompeii that was hit by a volcano 2,000 years ago and then never recovered, or like how does it impact, what cause and effect process happens from it. So that could be a way to do that. Any other questions about a certain topic or where to research something? Sorry about this weird psychedelic page here. All right, sure. All right, well, please feel free to stay around if you have any more questions, or if you want to make an appointment for research. We also have a 24/7 chat service where you can chat in and ask questions. So let me show you that. We have a page of ways to contact librarians here. It's called Ask a Librarian, and you can click on the Welcome to 24/7 chat. You can just submit a question if you don't want to chat at that moment, but you just want to leave a question there for us. You can call the library. You can call us personally if you click on our picture, our pictures, and then you can make an appointment through the scheduler. There's different ways to contact us here. So you'll see Harold and I have our pictures here, places to contact us. So these are people you can contact. All right, well, thank you so much for coming, everyone. Hopefully that was helpful. And soon we'll be having a few more, one about narrowing down a research topic and a research search, and then one about scripture and theological topics and doing that kind of research. So please feel free to come back. And good, thanks, Sylvia, and Yvette and Joanna.
Thanks.